What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode. Today I want to talk to you about how my commuting routine recently changed. So even though I'm working most of the time remotely from home, but still from time to time I have to go to the office, and so far I've normally been driving with my car, but I gotta say that parking prices in Berlin, they just went to kind of a ridiculous level, to up to, I think, €1 for 15-minute parking in the area where my office is. So that means if you're going there for a full 8-hour day, this is a lot of money. And even if you're only going for a couple of hours in and out, it still sums up quite a bit. So I've been going with one of my other bikes from time to time to work, but then in the end I arrive most of the time quite sweaty, which isn't great, and I always need some cool down time of 30 minutes to start looking like a regular human again. And then also riding regular pants on a hard carbon saddle isn't that much fun. So already a while ago I started looking at what kind of other options exist out there that might not be too pricey when it comes to electric bikes, because with an electric bike, of course, I don't have the need to pimp it out or weight tune it to have a carbon saddle on there. I could go for something that's more comfortable, and then also majorly it has the electric support, which means I wouldn't arrive at work super sweaty, which is why I was particularly happy when somebody from Fiido reached out to me asking me if I would be interested in testing out their carbon electric bike called the Air. And funny enough, the father of my girlfriend actually purchased this bike, I think 3 months ago, and is quite happy with it. So I kind of knew what I'm getting myself into because he seemed quite happy. So I thought that if he's happy, I might be quite happy with it as well. So let's give it a try. So now I want to share with you my experience that I had with this bike so far, commuting with it, running small errands. And for that, I would say, let's get inside. Let's get this out of the shadows so you can get a proper view of how this thing looks like. And let's talk about it in more detail. Let's go. All right, so now that we're inside, let's talk about what makes this Fiido Air so special. And just to be clear, this isn't just the first time that a company reached out to me asking me if I want to review an electric bike, and I right away jumped on it. There have been countless companies already reaching out over the past 2 years, trying to have me review their electric bikes, but most of them have been pretty basic, super heavy, not really for me, but a bit unpractical potentially, or nothing special. But with this one somehow caught my eye for various reasons. Also, of course, one being the one that I personally know somebody who just purchased this exact bike not too long ago and is quite happy with it. But then also looking at the specs, this being a carbon bike, so you have a full carbon frame, you have a carbon fork, you have a carbon seat post, you have a carbon handlebar. This all helps to make the bike quite light. And on this one, I now installed the kickstand on it. I know that it's not very road bike-ish, but it's super practical actually. When you're going to work or when you're trying to drop off some mail at the post station, to be able to just place the bike and have it stand there and not have to lean it against the wall and worry that somebody's going to touch it and it's going to fall over. So with that kickstand, it is only around 14 kilograms, which I think is very, very light, particularly for an electric bike. And then also when the package arrives at your doorstep, everything is very, very nicely packaged, very well protected. It is pretty much ready to go. There are only a couple of things that you need to assemble, of course the seat post and the pedals and that kind of stuff. But in general, it's a very well-rounded package, and you can pretty much get going within, I would say, 5 minutes after receiving the box. And even if you're not the most handy person, there was no issue, for example, with disc brake rub or something like this when putting on those wheels. Everything was already nicely centered, running smoothly. So no big issues when it comes to that. Also, all the tools that you need to assemble it have been in the box as well. I think that kind of also speaks towards how this company is thinking about the customer and the unboxing experience. But then also, when you know this channel, I think you might know already how important the looks and aesthetics are for me. Sometimes they overweigh functionality a little bit on the road bike topics. But here, I highly appreciated just the overall look of the frame, but then particularly that there are no visible cables. I mean, all the cables are hidden and routed internally, which is very, very nice and clean. Also, when it comes to the drivetrain, which I think is one of the major benefits of this bike, it is a belt drive. So there is no wax, there is no oil, no lubricant that can leave some dirt on your pants when you're going to the office or on your legs. So I think that this is a very smart decision to go with a belt drive for a bike that is supposed to bring you to places where you want to arrive looking neat and clean. And then also when it comes to the power of the motor, it is actually, for a bike that weighs that little, quite punchy. You have 3 different modes, of course. One mode being there is no support from the motor, you just pedal and the bike goes. Then there is a regular mode and there is a sport mode as well. And the sport mode has quite a nice kick to it. I'm also going to talk about in a second how you're controlling all those modes, which is also quite interesting and well thought through without like too many buttons and all that stuff. But give me a second to get to that. Other than that, just talking about some other specs which made this bike stand out for me is when you look at this kind of price segment where this bike is in, you also often find cable actuated disc brakes, while on this bike you have a fully hydraulic setup, which is of course going to be way more powerful than the cable actuated one. Braking power, I think particularly on an electric bike, is very, very important because of course on one hand you have the additional power of the motor that you kind of like need to work against, and then of course this bike also just weighs more than a 7-kilogram road bike, so you need the braking power potentially even more than on a high-end road bike. So now let's talk about the slightly gadgety side of this bike, which I of course very, very highly appreciate. When you're unbox this bike, you already notice that in the box there is something that looks like a smartwatch, and it is a smartwatch where you can also like track your steps and like all that kind of stuff, but it is mainly also a remote control and a display for this bike. So here on this watch, while you're riding, you can see in which mode you are. You can also see how fast you're going. You can turn on the lights front and rear, and you can also switch the modes from turning off the support to switching to normal mode, and then also switching to sport mode, which I think is a very, very smart and neat way to actually work with this, rather than having a display on the bike which can be damaged by people when you're parking the bike somewhere or whatever. As I said, I think it is a nice idea to actually have the display on your wrist. And then when it comes to the interfaces on the bike itself, you actually only have a main on-off button that activates the battery down here, and then there is up there a touch surface, which is a fingerprint scanner actually. So you actually unlock the bike with your fingerprint, and then with tapping on this you can switch modes, and you can also activate and deactivate the front and rear lights, which is actually all the modes and all the interaction you need, which I highly appreciate, that there you don't have a bunch of buttons there, you don't have a bunch of gears there and like a big interface. It is very, very nice and clean, and I think well thought through with this one fingerprint scanner up there. So I've been riding this bike now for a couple of days already through Berlin, and luckily it's still sunny out here, so it was a lot of fun actually just cruising through the city without getting sweaty, going to work, having a little bit of a detour here and there, just enjoying the sun and just like getting the legs moving while the motor is doing its thing. Massive fan of that. But then also once the season changes to a slightly colder and wetter one in particular, I think that this bike will still be like very, very valuable to move through the city, particularly because it ships with some very chunky 40mm wide tires with quite a bit of profile. So when it comes to grip on the road, I think there is not going to be any issue at all. And then also this bike is IP54 rated, which means that riding through wet roads or through some light rain is not going to be an issue at all. It will always bring you from A to B without damaging itself. So I gotta say that after first initial couple of rides, I've been a big fan of this. I now need to just find some space where I'm gonna keep this bike among all of my other bikes. I'm very, very happy that Fiido reached out to me, because this now is gonna be bringing me from my home to work at keeping me a little bit more active than just jumping into the car, and definitely keeping my parking cost / parking tickets way lower than so far. And in case you're interested in purchasing purchasing one of those bikes, Fiido was also so kind to provide a little discount code. So I'm going to link the link to the bike as well as a discount code down in the description below. In case you have any questions towards this bike, feel free to, of course, drop it down in the comments below. I'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible. I hope that you enjoyed this little commuting special episode. If you did, consider hitting that like button, consider subscribing as well, because there are some exciting more videos and projects coming up soon. And with that, I'll say, as always, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.